lesson is A Truly Beautiful Mind. So here you will learn about the great genius of all times, Albert Einstein. So we shall begin the class now. Albert Einstein was born on 14th March 1879 in the German city of Ulm, without any indication that he was destined for greatness. On the contrary, his mother thought Albert was a freak. To her, his head seemed much too large. So what happened? When he was born, no one knew that he will ever become such a great genius later on in his life. Even to his own mother, he seemed to be like a freak because he had a big head, a very large head. At the age of 2.5, Einstein still wasn't talking. When he finally did learn to speak, he uttered everything twice. Einstein did not know what to do with other children, and his playmates called him Brother Boring. So the youngster played by himself much of the time. He especially loved mechanical toys. Looking at his newborn sister Maja, he is said to have said, "Fine, but where are her wheels?" So he was very different from the other children. At the age of 2.5, he was not able to speak properly. Finally, when he learned to speak, he uttered all the words 2 times, and he could not even mingle with his playmates, with children of his age. They found him too boring, and most of the time he played by himself. When his sister was born, he looked at his sister and he told his parents, she's fine, but where are her wheels? She thought that even her sister was a toy. So he was very different kind of child from the very beginning of his life. A headmaster once told his father that what Einstein chose as a profession would not matter because he will never make a success at anything. Einstein began learning to play the violin at the age of 6 because his mother wanted him to. Later became a gifted amateur violinist, maintaining his skill throughout his life. Okay, so he was a very different child. So what? A headmaster of his school once told his father that it will not matter whether your son chooses any kind of profession because whatever he chooses, one thing is sure, he is never going to succeed in any of his profession. Later on, what happened? He played the violin also. He learned how to play violin at the insistence of his mother. His mother wanted him to play violin, so he learned it, and he learned it very well. And he learned it and played it for his own amusement, not for professional use. Throughout his life, he was a very good violinist. But Albert Einstein was not a bad pupil. He went to high school in Munich, where Einstein's family had moved when he was 15 months old and scored good marks in almost every subject. Einstein hated the school's regimentation and often clashed with his teachers. At the age of 15, Einstein felt so stifled there that he left the school for good. So what happened? He was not a very bad student. Though he was a very peculiar student, he was not bad in studies at all. He scored good marks in almost all the subjects, but some rules and regulations of the school he did not like, and therefore he always clashed with his teachers. His opinions did not match with his teachers and the school regimentation. So he did not like the school at all. He hated the school for all these strict rules and regulations. He was a person of his own thought. So at the age of 15, what happened? He left the school for good. He left that previous school, never to return again to that school. The previous year, Albert's parents had moved to Milan and left their son with relatives. After prolonged discussion, Einstein got his wish to continue his education in the German-speaking Switzerland, in a city which was more liberal than Munich. So what happened after he left the school in Munich? His parents also left for Milan, in another city they went, and he was left under the in charge of his relatives. So after a long discussion, he decided that he would study in Switzerland, in the city of Switzerland, in a city which was more liberal than Munich. So there in Switzerland, it was a German-speaking population who was there. So he decided to shift his education from Munich to Switzerland. Einstein was highly gifted in mathematics and interested in physics as well. So he was very good in mathematics, but he was also interested in physics as well. After finishing school, he decided to study at a university in Zurich, but science wasn't the only thing that appealed to the dashing young man with a walrus moustache. Okay, so he decided to study in the university, but not only science, other things also appealed to him. He also felt a special interest in a fellow student, Mileva Mary, whom he found to be a clever creature. This youngster had come to Switzerland because the University of Zurich was one of the few in Europe where women could get degrees. Einstein saw in her an ally against the Philistines, those people in his family and at the university with whom he was constantly at odds. The couple fell in love. So at the university in Zurich, what happened? He met a girl who was a Serbian girl. So he fell in love with her because she was also like him. Why the girl was there? Because the University of Zurich at the time was one of the few universities which offered the girls to study. So in most of the universities, maybe girls were not allowed. So they met there, and she was also a very intelligent creature. And Einstein, being intelligent himself, automatically fall in love with a young girl. The couple fell in love. Letters survived in which their affection put their affection into words. So they wrote love letters to each other, but their love letters were also very different. It was a mixture of affection and science. One example is given here. One, mixing science with tenderness, wrote Einstein, "How happy and proud I shall be when we both have brought our work on relativity to a victorious conclusion." So this was the kind of love letters he wrote. It was not the normal love letters which he wrote, but in fact it was a love letter of a very different kind, where he mixed tenderness with science. In 1900, at the age of 21, Albert Einstein was a university graduate and unemployed. So at the age of 21, he was a graduate and still unemployed. He worked as a teaching assistant and gave private lessons, and finally secured a job in 1902 as a technical expert in a patent office in Bern. Okay, so he started working as a tuition also he used to give, and then he used to work as a technical expert in a patent office in Bern. While he was supposed to be assessing other people's inventions, Einstein was actually developing his own ideas in secret. He was working for other people as well as at the same time developing his own ideas during that time. He is said to have jokingly called his desk drawers at the work the Bureau of Theoretical Physics. So here he says that he jokingly said, though I am working from other people, I am still inventing my own things, and hence it can be rightly called the Bureau of Theoretical Physics. One of the famous papers of 1905 was Einstein's special theory of relativity. When you talk about special theory of relativity, you can relate it with Einstein. This is one of his most famous works, according to which time and distance are not absolute. You cannot consider time and distance to be absolute or accurate. No, it is not. Indeed not. He proved that. Why? Because two perfectly accurate clocks will not continue to show the same time if they come together again after a journey of one of them has been moving very fast relative to the other. From this, the world's most famous formula which describes the relationship between mass and energy. So it says that two clocks, if you start them, will not continue to show the same time, even if they are started at the same time. They will show different times. So we cannot consider time to be absolute. From this theory, the formula E equal to mc square was derived. While Einstein was solving the most difficult problems in physics, his private life was unraveling. So here, his private life was also going through some difficult times, and he was here very busy in solving the difficult solutions of physics. Albert had wanted to marry Mileva right after finishing his studies. So when he was in the university, he had already fallen in love with a particular girl, Mileva, and now he wanted to get married with her, but there were so many objections, okay? She thought, his mother was against it. His mother was against the relationship. Why? Because Mileva was little older to him by 3 years old, 3 years, and the mother thought that she was too old for her son. Also, she was a very intelligent girl, and the mother did not like that the girl should be so intelligent. So the wedding was finally put off. But still they continued to love each other, and finally they got married in January 1903 and had 2 sons. But after a few years, the marriage faltered. The marriage did not last. The tenderness, the love letters mixed with tenderness and signs did not succeed. Finally it failed, and slowly what happened, their life became troublesome. So Mileva, the marriage faltered. Mileva meanwhile was losing her intellectual ambition and becoming an unhappy housewife. Slowly she was losing her ambition and she was becoming a very unhappy housewife. After years of constant fighting, the couple finally divorced in 1919. Einstein married his cousin Elsa the same year. So they divorced, and in the particular year, in the same year, Einstein got married with his own cousin sister Elsa. Einstein's new personal chapter coincided with his rise to world fame. In 1915, he had published his general theory of relativity, another theory of relativity he had published already, and which provided a new interpretation of gravity. An eclipse of the sun had in 1919 brought proof that it was accurate, and this general theory of relativity was proved correct when there was an eclipse in the year 1919. Einstein had correctly calculated in advance the extent to which the light from fixed stars would be deflected through the sun's gravitational field. The newspapers proclaimed his work as a scientific revolution, and such was his importance that the newspapers proclaimed his work as a scientific proclamation. Einstein received the Nobel Prize for Physics in 1921. He was showered with honors and invitations from all over the world and lauded by the press. And he was praised and he was recognized by the world for his work and contribution in the field of science. When the Nazis came to power in Germany in 1933, Einstein immigrated to the United States. In those days, when the Nazis came to power, Germany faced many troubled times. So what happened? In order to escape all these troubles, he immigrated to the United States of America. 5 years later, the discovery of nuclear fission in Berlin had American physicists in an uproar. Many of them had fled from fascism, just as Einstein had, and now they were afraid that Nazis could build and use an atomic bomb. So during these times, what happened? Many physicists, they had worked in Berlin, and they found the discovery of nuclear fission, which was a very dangerous thing. The discovery of bombs, which can be used for destruction of mankind, was being done in the Berlin. So many of the scientists who were opposing these ideas had already fled to the USA and different parts of the world, and they were fearing that the Nazis could use all these to make bombs to attack them. So they were scared. At the urging of a colleague, Einstein wrote a letter to the American President Franklin D. Roosevelt. So what happened? The American people also decided to make bombs in order to counter the Nazis in Germany. So when Einstein came to know of all this, one of his colleagues urged him to write a letter to the President of America. So the then President was Franklin D. Roosevelt. So he wrote a letter, and what he said in the letter is very important. A single bomb of this type exploded in a port might very well destroy the whole port together with some of the surrounding territory. He says that if this port is exploded, if this bomb is exploded in a port, then not only the port will be destroyed, but along with the port, the surrounding area of the port will also be destroyed. Such intensity of the bomb that destruction will be caused. So he was very much against the idea of these atomic bombs which will be used for the destruction of the humanity. But his words became true. Why? Because in the year 1945, 2 bombs were dropped on the Japanese city of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. And till today, those 2 cities are ravaged, have been damaged badly. They have not been able to come up from the trauma caused many years back. Einstein was deeply shaken by the extent of the destruction. Many people lost their lives, properties were damaged, many things happened which were definitely not liked by Einstein. And he was very shaken that humanity could be used against humanity. So you see here, he says, this time he wrote a public missive to the United Nations. In it, he proposed the formation of a world government. But unlike the letter to Roosevelt, this one made no impact. This time, the letter did not make any impact, but still he wrote. But over the next decade, Einstein got ever more involved in politics. So he decided that since it doesn't make any impact whether he writes letters or not, so he personally decided to join politics. Maybe he thought for the benefit of humanity. Agitating for an end to the arms build-up and using his popularity to campaign for peace and democracy. And this time, he used his popularity to campaign against the use of atomic missiles and bombs, which could do no good to humanity but can bring only destruction. And he used his popularity to campaign for peace and democracy as well. When Einstein died in 1955 at the age of 76, he was celebrated as a visionary and world citizen as much as a scientific genius. So when he died, he was not only considered a scientific genius but also a world visionary who visioned that there will be peace and democracy in the world. So not only he was a genius, but he was also a lover of peace. He was also a lover of democracy. So we can say that he was a genius altogether.